So I was thinking about this earlier. We've
Mhm.
been working together for like 3 years now, which is wild.
It seems longer.
It does seem longer.
Take that however you would like to. It does seem longer.
And what I think is really interesting is when I reflect back over the past 3 years, how both of us have evolved with what we do.
Hmm.
When you pull a thread, whether that is a training methodology or an ideology or a philosophy, and as you pull that thread and it starts to unravel a little bit more, you can pick up little nuggets that then form what it is that you offer and how it is that you practice. The way
Hmm.
that I reflect on this, for example, is how my palpation skill set has changed over the past 3 years. And I'm pretty confident now when I'm palpating that I can pick up a lot of orthopedic things through flexing legs and different assessments of how the body feels in a healthy horse versus a not so healthy horse. And then when I look at how that has changed in my practice, I then reflect on how your practice has changed and the conversations that we have around pain and behavior and different behavioral presentations that may indicate pain, which kind of fly under the radar. It's a
Yeah.
little bit beyond the horse just doing weird behaviors under saddle, and it's more
Hmm.
within the nuance within the training.
Hmm.
So, before we dive down into that a little bit more, I would really love it if you could give us a synopsis on who you are and what you do and how you got to this point.
Okay. Well, I I suppose I call myself a horse trainer. I do call myself a behavioral consultant, but I don't know how to label it. I would say if I tell people that I practice ethical horsemanship, that's the term that I like. I really don't like the term natural horsemanship because of the connotations behind it and the methods within which that is associated with. Um, I have gone down a rabbit hole of moving from kind of traditional stuff to natural horsemanship type stuff to biomechanics slash classical stuff to positive reinforcement stuff to whatever is happening right now, which again, I just come back to calling ethical horsemanship, where I'm really, I know in like a year or 5 years, I will look back at this time and have changed again, and in like we'll have all learned more, we'll have more information, but I really feel like I'm in a place now where I can really, really help horses, and I don't meet horses now and feel unsure about what to do in terms of what's appropriate. I feel quite confident about it, that I know what is appropriate. And I suppose that leads into, I don't mean it to sound um, mysterious. It's not a method. A lot of the stuff I'm doing is going out and assessing horses, and we're looking mostly at managing chronic stress and why that is present, and looking at discomfort or pain and what we need to do to investigate that. I do very little training at first with clients that looks like training that we would recognize, I guess. And I think that's where I struggle to get across what it is, because we are so used to doing things to horses and we have to do the thing to fix the horse. And I've kind of come around to this thing where, sometimes I'm going out to horses, and what we will do within that session is do some enrichment activities with that horse, and that is what is appropriate, and that's where it will go. And I don't know many other people who work like this. And it feels, I know you and I, like me and anyone watching, me and Yasmin have these conversations all the time, and she has been a huge influence in how I work, but having someone who's so on the same page and having these conversations is really helpful because I'd be really lost without it because you feel if we all say we feel like the things we're saying feel really radical and they shouldn't, but the industry is so on this is what the horse is doing, do these things to fix it. And I'm like, but why are they doing it? And then, as you say, you're pulling on that thread where I'm realizing most horses are chronically stressed. Most horses have discomfort in their bodies. And there is so much more to it than go to the vet, fix the pain, and crack on. And that is what I do. And that was really not concise, but I can't explain what I do and be concise about it.
No, I think that was the perfect explanation.
Mhm.
And likewise, I find our conversations enormously reassuring and empowering because sometimes it can feel like day after day you're presented with horses that are similar but different in their presentation, and it sort of feels a little bit like you're on this hamster wheel of saying the same thing over and over and over again. And there are humans who are on board and absolutely fabulous with it, and then there are humans who are not on board, or the concepts that we talk about feel very abstract to them and
Mhm.
they fall off the radar. And that can be very difficult as a professional to stick with your resolve and advocate for the horse. I
Mhm.
know I refer people to the vet a lot, but then at the same time, I have also been criticized for not referring people to the vet soon enough. And from my perspective, that's because when I'm assessing a horse, there are so many variables involved in that horse's presentation that I often find if I refer the horse to the vet straight away, they can kind of get lost or swept up in the whirlpool of a veterinary assessment, which for that horse in that moment might be really stressful,
Mhm.
is not going to help with their ongoing behavioral presentation. And so, if we can reduce some of those chronic stresses, we get a clearer picture of what's going on in the body. Or vice versa, that horse has already done a whole slew of veterinary assessments
Yeah.
and nothing has been found or nothing of note has been found. And so, we talk a lot about we've done nothing and we're all out of ideas, which I think might be one of my favorite things that that we sort of flit about between us. But it's that idea of, okay, well, let's actually change the management protocols and see what happens and
Yeah.
see what we're left with. But I also think with a lot of horses, you can pop the cap on the pressure in quite a big way by simply reducing the stress in their day-to-day life.
Mhm.
Um, Something that I think is really interesting, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately, is how oftentimes people can get caught up with thinking that an ideology is kind. So they might pick a specified training method and they might say, I do insert this training method because it's kind, because this is the way I'm going to develop my horse's body in a healthy way. And what I think is really interesting with that is you might watch them train their horse and they might be really light with their cues. They might use non-escalating negative reinforcement, for example, and they might they might not carry a whip, they might just use rein aids or body pressure or whatever. And yet that horse can still be presenting with discomfort related behaviors or stress related behaviors. And I think it's really interesting how people can get so caught up with the idea that that ideology is kind that they can't see the horse in front of them.
Mhm.
And I'd love to know some of your thoughts on that. And I know that's ambiguous, and I know that I'm going to be forcing you into a million years worth of digression, but we're all
No,
here for it.
I will. use my own horse as an example because that's easiest for me to do. Um, but what the thing is, so this isn't a tangent, I promise, but it's a setup. So many horses I meet are traumatized, and that's not because I'm meeting the few traumatized horses that exist. It's that a lot of horses are traumatized, and we don't recognize it as that because so many horses are so stressed, and the behaviors that we're seeing, we're looking at them. We look at horses in terms of their actions, and what I mean by that is instead of looking at that horse's facial expression or how they're presenting, we judge the way they feel about work around, do they stand for me to get on? Do they comply with this? Do they do the jumps? Do the jumps? Jump the jumps? Do they go out of the gate? And that sometimes what we're doing there is we're thinking the most compliant, potentially shut down horses are really happy in their work because they're not protesting. And there's like a whole movement now. I've gone. There's a whole movement now around people are talking about pain a lot. Like there's a lot of online trainers, they're talking about pain a lot, but they're investigating pain once they've tried to ride the horse for several weeks through bronching fits. And they're going, we're listening now. And I'm like, before that horse even bronked, before you sat on that horse, but as you tack that horse up, the signs were there. So there's this frustrating thing for me where I'm like, we're still not, it's still not good enough. And it creates this fairy tale of like, oh, you go to the vet, they fix the pain, and then we ride the horse and everything's really happy again. And I'm like, unfortunately not, because I'm not going to go down the pain thing because we'll be here for 7 hours. Let's just put that to one side. But let's just say you did fix the pain. You've got a horse who has had some really, really negative experiences with training and being ridden. Loads of horses, even when we think we're training quietly and kindly, if our training is just apply pressure until horse does the thing, and that horse has found that to be scary and stressful or painful or uncomfortable, that association is there. It's not going to go away by us continuing to gently use pressure. This is a hard one to sit with because the whole industry, that is the normal way to train horses. That is the only way people think you can train horses. It's like a thing. And I've like come around to this in the last few months, like really solidly in my head, in that you can't have a horse who's been traumatized, they've been through perhaps really rough training or they've been in a lot of pain, put them back in the same scenario and kind of go, no, it's fine now. I know it feels the same and I'm using pressure. But eventually they're going to realize this is fine. There's nothing in that for them except I don't like this stuff happened to me before. This is why I now use positive reinforcement. And I'm going to be super clear about this. I use food. Like it's food. And because I know people are like, oh, it can be scratches. Scratches are not high value enough or um eh, what's the word? They're not effective. You can't be using scratches to train consistently. Do you know what I mean? They can be useful for certain little situations, but I feel like people beat around the bush going, oh, don't worry if you don't like to use food, you can just use scratches. And it's like, well, if your horse values them enough, and if you can be there in all situations ready to scratch him, sure. But we need to be using food. And this is like I like strongly, strongly believe now using food is the fastest way to change his associations, have horses be able to downregulate, change the situation enough that it's something completely new to them that they don't have these previous negative associations with. And you start to get a horse that kind of goes, huh, this is different. You didn't put any pressure on me. We just did this thing, and now I'm back in the field and it was fine. And you start to build that. So I'm now going to go back to my own horse and tell the story I was going to tell 10 minutes ago. So I trained kind of with heavy pressure doing natural horsemanship with him. He was very, very obedient. He was very quick. He was very like he was just really, really easy horse. Then I went into the more biomechanics, classical dressage stuff of Cavison, little tappy stick, not hitting with stick, just the stick was touching him. However, already he has history of me kind of swinging ropes at him to frighten him into moving. So there's already an association there of this might escalate. It doesn't matter how soft I use it, there's a thing there, this might escalate. That's why it works. If it didn't, he wouldn't listen to it, he would be unbothered. And so even when I was doing this sort of kind groundwork of gently touching him with stick, because I wasn't frightening him or hurting him, there is no way he was finding that to be a pleasant experience. I would say he found that an unpleasant experience. However, to look at it, I'm just walking my horse around using gentle pressure and it looks really kind, but there's nothing in that for him. At best, it's irritating for him. At worst, it's quite unpleasant for him. And I thought I was helping his body and I was doing all of these things, and maybe his body improved a bit, but at what cost to how he was feeling? And I think this, it always comes back to, I know we talk about this a lot, I get quite, there's almost like an arrogance to us as humans of, we know what is best for this horse's body, and I'm going to, oh, I know you don't like it, but you have to do it for your body. And I'm just like, horses, given the opportunity and the environment, and us not asking them to do inappropriate things, I think they pretty much know what's okay for their own body, and we can definitely guide them in ways that don't feel so oppressive to them. So I completely forgot what your original question is, but I think this is where it was going. If we start to not even train with food, but do enrichment type things, we can start to play with movement in a way that to the horse doesn't feel like training. It doesn't even feel like we're suggesting things. They're just going, "Oh, what's over here? Oh, what's over here?" And immediately you get movement that is not braced up. They're not bracing up, going, "Oh, what are you doing to me?" They're just moving around. And I know you use this a lot in like your bodywork sessions when you're trying to, just get horses to down regulate and relax a little bit. And what is fascinating to me is how little you need to do to create this really big change in the body. And completely forgotten what you originally asked me, but does that cover it, or did you ask me something else?
Honestly, I can't remember because I'm excited about the threads
Um,
that you've that you've opened up on these digressions. This is where we evidence that we don't have a script
we do
because
not have a,
we ask
I
a
have,
question
I
and
have
then lose the question.
nothing, and this
Um,
is, yeah.
but I think this was probably my, if I could call it the great unraveling,
Mm,
without sounding like an egotistical
yeah.
maniac here. But with my practice, when I saw how a treat scatter, and I know it was Rachel Dreisman's work that I happened across when I found the treat scatter, but I can't even remember the context of
Mhm.
how that even came to be. And I was watching a horse who was quite restricted in their body sniff around for food, and I saw them go through different novel movements like abducting a forelimb and flexing their back and doing some rein-back steps or backward steps with ease when they couldn't access that
Mhm.
with human intervention. But not only that, their body seemed to unwind and truly relax. And from a bodywork perspective, that meant the superficial layers of restriction were released,
Mhm.
which meant if I was to assess that horse and palpate, I could get to, the big problem, the need or emergency, if you like, rather than sort of firefighting with the chronic stress restriction that
Hmm.
was wrapping up other problems. But also, it's such a sustainable thing to do. It's
Yeah.
so replicable. It takes approximately zero skill.
Hmm.
And so then we start to get away from this idea that you have to train for years and years and years and study to get your
Hmm.
horse moving in correct biomechanics. But also, what fascinates me is if you can, and I'll use the term down regulate their nervous system, and I know it's more complicated than that, but if you can get them to down regulate, I personally haven't happened across anything wrong with the posture that is created from getting them to downregulate. And it strips away years of training, years of conflict, all of the behavioral things which come from trying really hard in a body that doesn't necessarily want to do the thing because of chronic stress restriction, which is a welfare concern in and of itself.
Hmm.
And so with that in mind, I can't see I can't see a problem with getting on board with that method of training, even as a foundation, even if you want to go on and continue to do things with your horse. I think starting off life like that teaches you so much about your horse's preference, your horse's body language, your horse's facial expressions, that then if you want to branch into something else, you already have a library or a catalogue of their facial expressions and behaviors and things, how they learn, how they respond to novel situations, that you can be guided within that. And I think this is also where training with food and positive reinforcement in that sort of generic thing where people think you just, put treats in the pony like a slot machine and it performs the behavior you want it to do. I think
Hmm.
this is where it starts to become a different thing in its entirety because what we're not doing, as you mentioned a little while ago, is in some positive reinforcement spheres you swap the whip for food, but it's still not nice.
Yeah. I think, I'm sort of, I feel like positive reinforcement is still such a small percentage of the entire industry. I feel like it must be like what, I don't know percentage. It feels like 1% or something. It feels tiny. And I know if you're in that circle, it probably feels like there are more voices. But I think in the general scheme of things, it's tiny, tiny, tiny amount of people who are using positive reinforcement. That's what it feels like to me. And I think I love what people are doing. I know people are advocating for positive reinforcement and wanting to get people on board. Like, I love that. But what I find to be, I don't think frustrating is the word. I'm not frustrated about it, but there's a misconception that it's like, oh, negative reinforcement is you apply pressure and then they do till they do the thing. Positive reinforcement is they do the thing and you give them food. And it again, it's making it's this idea of all there is behavioral modification, and we're not looking at anything else. And I'm going to take a mounting issue, for example. You can switch to positive reinforcement. So you use it just for anyone who, you're using food reinforcers for behavior. You're not using pressure. And you can kind of keep feeding that horse to stand at the mounting block and you can train that behavior. But like even standing at the mounting block's not even a thing that's difficult to train if the horse is cool with it. When you've got all of this other history there, like pain, discomfort, previous terrible associations with being ridden in the mounting block. When you're using food, I think people, if it doesn't work in like one or two sessions, people go, well, it doesn't work. And I'm like, no, this is us listening to the horse. This is where this horse is in real time with autonomy and a choice. And you just don't like what they're saying to you. So you say it doesn't work. I know if I can just, use some pressure and keep saying no, the horse will do it. So that's a better thing and it's quicker. And it's like, but what are you, if the horse kind of, if you've got a horse, they come to the mountain block, they know what it means, they know what being ridden is, and every time you get on that block, they just take a step backwards. And every time they do that, you get a flag and you flap it until they line up again. You can go back and forth doing this. At some point, that horse is going to give in and just go, "You're really not listening to me. This is really," at some point, no matter what, they're going to stop. And this is what happens to a lot of stuff. And they go, "I fixed the issue." And I'm like, okay, but that horse was stepping back because they're anxious, because it hurts when you ride them, it hurts when you get on, they've just got discomfort in their body, whatever, any of these things. You haven't fixed any of those things. You have shut the horse up. When we're using food, and I'm kind of saying to a horse, hey, do you want to come and stand here? But if you don't want to, that's cool too. You can go and eat over there. I'm actually getting, I'm not, what I'm trying to say is, I'm not trying to make the horse comply. I'm trying to give them a choice and find out how they're feeling. And if they don't want to, that is valuable information for me to be like, right, there is something wrong here. What is that? And it's, you always say this, like, it's not sexy. It's not like miracle cure. Oh, one session, look how amazing. Sometimes it is that. Sometimes it is that, but generally no. Um, and I think that's my frustration when it's being compared, going, well, that person does this and it's one session and it's fixed. And I'm like, congratulations, I can do that too. But I choose not to because I realize now what I was doing was just telling the horse to shut the hell up. You do as I say. I don't really care how you feel about it. In a gentle, coercive way, not a big rah way. But I was still kind of going, yeah, I hear you, but also, no, come here. And
Hmm.
that's kind of even that relationship, the horse might not be like frightened of me, but I'm pretty sure they used to see me and go, oh, God, like, what now? Whereas when we're training with food and training with food well, so we're actually giving the horse choices, not going, you only get the food if you do this thing, otherwise no food for you. You have a horse that can make those choices, feels comfortable doing so, and you just get a really honest look at how they're feeling. It's so much more complex than feed the horse when they do the thing. And this is where it gets lost. And this is where people go, oh, positive reinforcement doesn't work. Oh, it made my horse pushy. It didn't work. It didn't work. And I'm like, it's a skill set just as much as anything. The idea that you could pick it up, try a couple of sessions and be like, oh, it's crap. It doesn't work. And it's like, it's not a Hoover. Like it's a whole skill set to learn. And I'm still learning all the time. Like, I'm constantly trying to I always say I think I'm adequate at it. I'd like to be really, really good at it. And I think that's where it gets lost. And also we're sitting at this on this uncomfortable fence of I want to be really ethical, but also I want to ride my horse now and I don't really want to spend months undoing his trauma and fixing his body. I'd like to just kind of sit on him now and do stuff. And that's where it gets confused because if someone's going to say to you, no, no, it's fine, he's fine, just crack on, it's really tempting to slip off that side of the fence and tell ourselves that that's ethical. Thoughts, thoughts and feelings.
It's on a postcard. No, I definitely agree. And I think one of the most challenging things about this is also the self-reflection piece, particularly if you've got a lot of history with a horse and you're someone highlights to you that they are seeing that your horse is not okay. We've both been there where we've highlighted to people that their horse is not okay. And for everyone involved in their horse or with their horse and with training their horse, as uncomfortable as it is, they do have a significant amount of responsibility in the feelings that have been cultivated within their horse's presentation,
Mhm.
notwithstanding the people who have recently purchased a new horse, got it home, and then gone, oh, wow, we've got a whole lot to unpick here. And I think that reflection is a necessary reflection so that we can look at what it is we do, what motivates us, and how we can respond differently in the future. But then hanging out with that reflection of essentially, you know, labeling yourself as the perpetrator time and time again isn't helpful because your feelings of suffering in the moment and your um propensity to browbeat yourself to suffer more because of, how you were trying your best in the past isn't actually going to change the horse in the moment. But where I'm going with this is I think a lot of people don't want to even pop the cap on that feeling as well. And then that's where they will kind of carry on doing what they were doing or revert back to type because it's just uncomfortable to face themselves like that. So, for example, a horse that might turn away from them when they're tacked up, and yet you really want to ride, but you also know that the horse is turning away from you, and therefore there's something going on there, and yet you really want to ride.
Mhm. Yeah, it's it's really hard because, you know, I don't go out and want to upset people. What I want to do is go out and be like, wow, your horse is really calm and unstressed and not in pain. That's what I want to do. And it's also not like a fun thing for me that I enjoy doing or get money out of. But, people obviously have you out because they would like an opinion. And the reality is that we have normalized these behaviors so much as not a big deal or just a thing that we should listen to, but also don't go to the extreme of not riding the horse. And this is the thing we talk about all the time. The pressure to ride, the expectation to ride is so huge that it's seen as an extreme thing to stop sitting on that horse's back. And I'm about to say something that's going to be confronting, but here we are. If we, you know, if your horse is turning away from his tack, not wanting to stand while you get on, not wanting to catch, I would not be riding them. Those are like, we want a relationship and communication with that horse, then they communicate and we kind of go, oh, not like that. Only in ways that feel nice. And it's sort of, it's really difficult. Do you know what? It's more difficult when it's subtle because it's just a bit like, oh, I didn't really like that face. I didn't really like how he turned his head away from me there. But I know he'll still let me do it. And I really want to go on this ride. And then it snowballs into a thing. And sometimes we half address it, but then we get riding again and we're like, yeah, we're back riding. And then it starts again. And we start to ignore it again. I see it a lot, and what's really, really hard, and I write about this stuff a lot, is that everyone else around this person except me is pressuring them to ride this horse. They see me like what, once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month. Everyone else around them at all times say, "Oh, you're riding yet? Why are you not riding? Oh no, like, you should ride." And their horses are also showing these signs, so it's like, "Oh, well, they're riding, and their horse is much worse than mine." And this is where it's this frustrating thing, and it's really easy for me to sit here and be like, oh, you should just do, you've got to listen to your horse, you should just do the thing. Like, I have gone through this whole thing, like, I kept riding. My horse he doesn't even do any of those things. He's too compliant. But there's like that itch in the back of my head where I was like, he doesn't really like this. And now I'm in a place where nobody can pressure me because there's no one around. And also, like, I'm so comfortable in that knowledge where I'm like, I know that it's not appropriate to ride him. I'm there, I've accepted that, I'm completely cool with it. When you're on the fence or when you've just bought a horse, that you bought this amazing riding horse and you've had all of these dreams, and you're kind of suddenly looking at this horse 3 weeks in and you're kind of going, oh, this isn't the horse that I thought I bought. And I've spent all of this money and I got them vetted and I've got my saddle fitted and I got the physio. And then some guy like me is going, oh, well, actually, your horse is doing that because it's not appropriate to ride them right now for XYZ. That's hard. And I appreciate that's hard. But also, I'm there to advocate for the horse and tell the truth. So it's it's really, really hard to do this as a professional who genuinely wants to advocate for that horse before any business that I have, before any money that I get, to the point that I am walking away from clients who are not on board with it because I cannot, I'm at a point where I cannot. And I just want to start changing the narrative of having these horses who are so chronically stressed. They don't know if they're coming or going. Even like coming into the stable is really stressful for them. Their musculature over their back is really inappropriate. They're not even able to kind of stand with you quietly on a lead rope and just chill out. And yet we're still encouraged, no, you got to ride them to help them settle in. It's bizarre, like it's illogical. And yet you feel like the fun police because it's like, oh, it's her. She doesn't ride those horses. And I'm like, no, I don't ride my horses because that's really inappropriate. Those guys are like elderly. Those guys are like older and their bodies aren't for that anymore, and that's fine. But in saying that, I go out to see horses whose bodies are much more compromised than my horses' bodies, and they're being ridden, and that's normal. And I don't know how to navigate that without one, hurting people's feelings, and two, looking like a maniac, you know?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I understand.
Yeah.
And just sort of drawing from your point of not riding, the thing that is abundantly clear to me is that when you don't prioritize riding and you start to prioritize your horse's interests,
Hmm.
I personally get so much joy from seeing my horse have fun and have fun in inverted commas, seeing them engage in activities where they are interested in what we're doing. They have the option to leave, but they want to be there, not in a frantic way. Their facial features are relaxed, their body is relaxed, and they've chosen to be in that place. And then once you've experienced that and that feeling that the horse has really chosen to be there, not because the lead rope is unclipped, yet if they move away, you have also got a schooling whip and you will kind of force them back, but because they actually greeted you at the field, came with you willingly, put their head in the head collar, came with you willingly, engaged with what it was that you wanted to do with them. Um, they had autonomy in what it was that they were doing as well. That feeling, once you've felt that, I don't see how you can want to sit on a horse's back when that horse is pulling all of even the subtle behaviors that it doesn't want to be there. I can't reconcile that one.
And I think that's where everyone's in a different place, aren't there? And that's what I struggle with because I'm in such a solid place of like, these are my ethics and I won't wobble from them, that I find it difficult to draw a line professionally where I'm like, where is my line of wanting to improve this horse's life and what's going on to enabling things that I'm really uncomfortable with? And I don't know what that line is for me. I've like kind of picked it, but it's really difficult. And I think as a trainer or behaviorist or whatever, I often get lumped in with the fix-it trainers, which most trainers are. Most trainers are working off of they go out and they modify behavior. That's it. That's what they do. We take a horse to a training space, we apply pressure till they do thing. That is what most trainers are doing. And it doesn't matter which method it is, whatever it is, that's what they're doing. I get messages from people being like, oh, my horse has got really bad ground manners. He's just so bullshit and disrespectful. I need to teach him to respect me. And immediately I'm like, I send them my blurb and I'm kind of like, this is not my client. I can tell straight away. And I think I don't I don't know how to I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore. I do. I don't know how to bridge that gap of people who are already going to be, when I'm saying my client, I mean somebody who's on board with this, somebody who's open to this. I don't know how to bridge that gap between people who are really on board with this to people who are still on the other side of the fence but might reach out. And I feel bad when I'm like putting them off, but I also don't like to be in situations which I know you've been in before, where I'm stood in front of a horse, I'm advocating for the horse, and I can see the owner's face just be like, this woman's crazy. I'm
Hmm.
not going to stop riding this horse. How, like, it's just, oh, and I, I don't know how to bridge that gap. And I don't know how to support people who are on these yards surrounded by these people. And I can't be there every day to support them and keep them kind of, strong and like you can do it. You can. And that's a big thing for me because there's some clients I still think about where they were super on board and it's like they 180'd back to, oh, I'm just gonna get on the horse. And some of these horses are really like not okay horses. And those ones always like haunt me because I'm like, oh, how could I have supported that person better? And maybe there was nothing I could do. But these are the things that I struggle with. And I also think there's a level, and I know we talk about this a lot of how much of it is genuine kind of your own opinions and feelings about the horse, and how much of it is like an identity of I do ethical horsemanship, and this person says this, and this is right, and now I'm going to justify this because this fits my narrative, and I'm going to make it fit because it makes me feel good. And I see a lot of that where we start to justify going, oh no, it's actually good for me to chase him with a flag because it gives him clarity. And I'm like, I don't really, I don't really, I start to see these things snowball, and I've seen it from people who I kind of thought were really on the same page, and then we're like, oh no, but actually it is okay to chase the horse with the flag sometimes because it's good for them because reasons. And I start to feel really disillusioned to be like, oh, okay, is anyone really on board? Like what is going on? What is going on?
Yeah, I
What?
definitely get that
Like,
one.
like,
Especially with the clarity piece, because what I want to know is what is it that you are giving clarity on? When you're saying I'm giving the horse clarity, well, when you ask the horse to do the thing before the flag entered the chat,
mhm,
um, what was the horse doing? What was the horse communicating to you? And when
mhm.
we've got that clarity piece coming in, is it that you need to give the horse clarity, or is it the fact that you need to cultivate skills in listening to what the horse is trying to tell you and acting accordingly? And then off of the back of that, if you think about how, a horse can hear your heartbeat, a horse can almost sense the emotion that you bring into the room. I don't understand why something like a flag or a whip actually even needs to be part of the conversation. If they can pick those subtle signals up, if they can pick up the flick of an ear from another horse, I don't understand why that's even a valid thing to be presented with.
And there's so many things. You don't even have to have any tools in your hand to be aversive, but it's there's I think for me, I'm like I'm very kind of I pride myself on like integrity. Like when I'm saying things, like I really believe it, I really mean it. Like when I'm with my horses every day, I embody that. Like I'm so sort of there with it and trying to give them autonomy and worrying about how they're feeling and doing all of these things that when somebody I perhaps thought was, I've really liked things they've put out there, and then I see them doing that, I'm always just like, oh God. And we justify all of these things in different ways of, oh no, we're helping his body because he needs to collect to do this, or he wants to, and I'm looking at the horse and I'm like, well, he looks pretty miserable to me. So how can it be helping him if it's making him feel like crap? And this kind of we use terms like, oh, we're just redirecting his attention. And I'm like, by frightening him. And, if you're in a situation with your horse where you have to wave a flag and it's the only way you get his attention, maybe he's not ready to be in that environment yet. Maybe there's some other stuff going on. And I know there's all of this talk around safety, And sometimes, because people are in really inappropriate setups with their horses where they have to bring the horse in from a certain place and it's all terrible, sometimes, yeah, in like an emergency moment, of course I use pressure. Like I'm not being like, oh, I walk around with a halo on and like, but when we're saying it's needed, we talk about boundaries, but then we deliberately put the horse in a situation where they're really stressed that they don't need to be in so we can teach them boundaries. I'm just like, this is not, this is for us. And we're deliberately putting them in this situation to be like, see, I need to do this because he's really stressed without a leader or whatever the thing is. And it all comes down to, I think I'm so far off the path of what other people believe horses are for within their sort of moral compass. But they're like, oh no, but he has to do that. And I'm just like, why? Why does he have to do that? And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, no, he doesn't. You just don't do that. And I have yet to meet a horse who is, so horrendously dangerous that I cannot quite quickly train them to do emergency things like can we bring horse in from field or can we set up the living environment so we don't need to bring horse in from field right now while we work on this? And that's where it's missed. We just kind of go, this is the environment, this is what the horse has to do. How do I make that happen? And then we say it was kind. And that's not where I come from. I don't go out and fix people's horses. I go out and teach them about behavior, teach them about stress, signs of stress, teach them about learning theory, teach them about the nervous system, all of these things, so then they can then make their own choices. And if they're using sort of more, more pressure, more stressful training methods, I explain to them exactly what's happening because there's a lot of misinformation out there that I also used to peddle because I believed it, because I was also misinformed of that using this high pressure stuff, breakdown to breakthrough is one of the phrases in natural horsemanship, that it's helping. And it's just not at at best, you're kind of shutting the horse down and you'll get the compliance that you want, but there's like chronic stress rumbling away in the background. Or at worst, you'll actually create a horse that's so wired and hypervigilant that they will be explosive around you. And I wish that, I wish that what I was saying wasn't so radical, but every single time I go out to a new client who's on a big livery yard, one of the biggest sort of problems that they're struggling with is they're like, oh, this person told me this. Everyone's saying I'm too soft. Oh, everyone's saying I just need to get on with it. She's taking the mick out of me. Oh, I had this trainer out and they said the horse is dominating me. The physio came out and said, oh, she's just being a mare. And it's the same story over and over and over. And that's why I do all of the stuff that I do online. That's why I'm having this incoherent conversation with you to just feel if we keep talking about it, the people that want something different can access it and kind of go, ah, that really resonates with me. And that's why I'm so vocal about it online. I'm not trying to change people's minds. I'll never do that, but you can't. But I want to reach the people who are already kind of going, I'm not comfortable with this. Um, but it took me a long time to figure that out. I was like, oh no, you're not changing people's minds. You can't do that. You can, however, lure in the ones that are kind of going, huh, that's kind of makes sense. I wasn't very comfortable with what I've been told, and that makes sense to me. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, I think we should bring this one home now. That feels like a really good place to stop. And I am here for that as well. We keep talking and we keep saying the uncomfortable things. And, I found on my social media, I have been trying less to flagrantly spout my opinion and more to ask uncomfortable questions.
Mhm.
My most recent one, I guess, being about the skeletal maturation. And,
Um,
with what we know about skeletal maturation, should we really be riding horses as 2, 3, 4 year olds?
mhm,
And what was interesting was people's responses to that in the comment section and the inference that they took from what I wrote about my own opinions. And I think it's really interesting. I think the landscape is really interesting, and I think that we're seeing a big divide. I think we had the push for kind horsemanship, whatever that looked like. And
mhm,
then I think that people realize that being kind truly takes a really long time, and that made them feel uncomfortable, and the pendulum started to swing back the other way. And so,
mhm,
if we can keep on being the lighthouse for the people who want to be kind genuinely and feel like they have no support around them,
mhm,
or, feel like the people on their yard aren't, but they just need to keep seeing things which are just going to keep pushing them in the right direction, I think that's really important. So, with that in mind, can you tell people where they can find you and find your offerings?
oh, I'm just on I mean, mostly on Facebook. You can find a lot of my articles on my website, which is just you'll do the thing. It's lshorsemanship.co.uk. My writing is more coherent and structured. You can learn things from it instead of this was just this is like a hang. I do have a Patreon with some it's a mix of things. It's like a I'm trying to make it into a library of videos around, everything. There's some training videos, there's lots of enrichment videos, there's different management videos, things like that. And my Facebook, I'm very, very active on there, posting my articles on there as well, which is the same name, but you can leave the link. Um, and I'm based in the northeast of England, to be clear. Like because that does come across as confusing to some people sometimes. Um, the accents will give it away. Um, but yeah, thanks for having a chat. I feel like we could do so much. We have a lot to talk about,
Oh, so much,
so much to talk
so
about,
much.
and I'll make you come and do a live with me, and then you have to because
Are
now
you
it's
gonna are you gonna get a flag and make me, just to be really clear about it?
reveal. Well,
But seriously, thank you so much. I
um,
really appreciate
yeah.
what you do, and I really appreciate having another person on board to, talk through things and just keep up the spirit, because sometimes it can be a lonely old place
Well, sometimes I
when
think,
you're
what if you and I are just completely wrong and crazy, and everyone else is right?
oh, it's a possibility.